Hi everyone, my name is Matt Ferguson and welcome to another one of our Sonar Spotlight interviews. This time it's part of our Q4 InsurTech briefing, where every quarter we chat to our insurance and InsurTech friends about a particular topical trend that we've seen through our analysis. This time it gives me great pleasure to be joined by Dennis Barnes from RGAX. And as we'll be finding out, we'll hear a bit about what Dennis, you get up to in your day job, and equally what RGAX get up to as a business and with your customers. And we're going to be taking a look at a sector that's close to RGAX's heart and how the life space has evolved over time. And specifically its significance for reinsurance and your customers as a result. And even perhaps, Dennis, we might get you to make some predictions for what's next in the market based on the conversations you've been having and things you've been observing. So Dennis, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And maybe we can kick off with some introductions.
Yeah, that sounds good, Matt. First of all, thank you for having me, Matt, and look forward to continuing our dialogue with Sonar and our relationship. It's exciting. And, I'm approaching my 5-year anniversary with RGA. I came in as CEO of RGAX, which is our innovation arm. And really, our focus has been innovating across the value chain of insurance and really trying to explore how we can modernize, leverage new technologies, and explore new business models. So to get there, we've been also looking at partners and trying to identify areas where we can partner, or in some cases, even invest in organizations to really advance our agenda and accelerate our learning. And so, yeah, it's been a great journey. And my background was outside of insurance, so it's been fun to come in with a career in advertising and marketing and entrepreneurship, and then try my hand at this world of reinsurance and insurance. It's quite a change. So thanks again. It's happy to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm sure bringing all of that wealth of experience, I have some similarities in background, so I can appreciate some of, hopefully, the complementary skills that brings to the role. Sure. So thinking about what you've been observing, and let's come on to kind of your tenure in a moment, and that how those topics and trends have evolved. But what are the key trends that you're seeing at the moment, or you're seeing in the life space?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think I should start with just the customer, the end consumer, if you will, and a perspective there, because COVID has really increased awareness and demand for life insurance, but the consumers also have less interest in sitting down in, more of a human connection across the table as they explore their opportunities. So that's led to, from a digital experience, a whole nother level of momentum, and the digital transformation of organizations has been more critical than ever. So I'd say, got to start with that customer lens and say, what's important to the consumer? Well, the products are increasingly important because of a pandemic. The awareness is high, but their desire for a digital experience and seamless experience is high as well.
Fantastic. And how are they? You talked about that customer lens. Are your own customers, RGA's customers, are they taking the same approach? And what's the impact on their business and your business as a result, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say there's continued interest in alternative data sources for underwriting. So as the consumer is looking for a faster journey, a few clicks to the buying experience, those alternative evidences are critical. Digital transformation journeys within our client organizations were accelerated. So something might have been on the roadmap for years, and suddenly it's no longer an alternative. It's got to be done if we're going to stay relevant. And new themes emerging around, embedded insurance. And I think we've seen more of that in property and casualty, but you're starting to see an ion embedded in life and health with affinity groups and other channels. And with COVID and a recognition of not just physical health, but mental health, there's also been a desire to bring more health engagement solutions forward. And those are good for the consumer and for the carrier. And so you've got kind of that momentum combined with leveraging automation and new tools. So, once we called emerging technologies, machine learning and AI and robotic process automation, they're no longer emerging, they're here. And so those are impacting the journey for the consumer from distribution through claims. How do we kind of automate the experience, streamline the experience? And so I'd say, those algorithms are being honed, those technologies are being refined, and all of that is what's impacting our carrier clients and in a big way, our organization.
Yeah, really interesting. So do you think is it more a case of, or in your description there, it sounded more like solutions have now been implemented as opposed to the conversation being how do we implement? It's now a case of they're implemented and actually how do we refine and increase efficiency or increase accuracy or combination of all of that?
Yeah, I think that's largely the case. I mean, there will always be pockets of opportunity to plug in new capabilities and continue to advance. And there are always early adopters and late adopters of new technology. And so there's still plenty of implementation to be done, I'm sure. But many organizations have now gotten to a point where they've implemented and are refining, which is a good thing. And the customer experience should be better. They should be finding efficiencies out of those new technologies. So yeah, I think, in reality, the evolution, if the pandemic did anything positive for our industry, it was increasing awareness and increased sense of urgency to meet the consumer where they are with all the other industries that they experience.
Yeah, very interesting. And how we certainly see that from our own conversations as well. And you mentioned carriers. I'm always interested in the broker side of the business as well. How have those conversations evolved, and how do you perceive the changes there?
Yeah, I think it's very similar in that, as an advisor or broker who probably has built a nice portfolio, building personal relationships and interacting with customers, suddenly the customer may not want to sit down and talk. It might be looking for that virtual experience. And so on the advisor and broker side of things, very similar. It's been a digital transformation journey. And as a result, hopefully, it also gives them an opportunity to take on new and more business than they might have been able to handle in the previous world. So yeah, no small feat for the advisor or broker either. Yeah, it's been,
oh no, absolutely. Well, I was going to say when there's almost, I don't know if it's a risk or it's just a natural consequence of seeing opportunity in the market and change happening, that it all starts to sound very positive, and we're going to change the world and everything's going to be great. Consumers are going to have an amazing experience, but obviously there's the pragmatic side as well, right? So what about the challenges? What are the things that are causing headaches, and what challenges are you seeing in organizations? And perhaps compared to how when you joined the business, how have those challenges changed?
So yeah, that's interesting, because when I first came into the industry, the first few months, I traveled around the world talking to customers, and really trying to understand what were the top issues facing the C-suite of our clients. And I could come in as an outsider and kind of be vulnerable and say, I don't know much about what's happening in this industry. I'm here to learn. And then I can take that finding back and think strategically about our focus. And so they were very open. And to be honest, I'd say these conversations 5 years ago, around alternative data sources and digital transformation and emerging technologies. And, the challenges are the same. They were just accelerated with COVID. So they might've been on the roadmap and on the minds of the C-suite, and a little bit of kind of out there for people to try to figure out how they're going to impact the business. And that was all just accelerated over the last 2 years. So I'd say that the challenges are the same. But in terms of kind of overcoming them, thinking about the competition for talent that's necessary. So, the skills, the people skills needed to implement new capabilities, learning to partner with organizations in their kind of buy versus build scenarios. Sometimes it's a buy or partner decision, and that takes a different type of skill or mindset. A lot of organizations, are a build first mentality and have learned that to be effective, they need to partner. And then navigating some of these new technologies when you have legacy systems and processes and, you've been around doing things for a similar way for a long period of time. It's a massive undertaking to deal with the legacy environment as you try to modernize.
Of course. Yeah, there's that no mean feat of kind of balancing the core operations of the business whilst also trying to develop innovative new ways to spin up and deliver products and services. When we were chatting earlier as well, you mentioned and kind of one of the topics you touched on was around the competition for talent, but also some of the more, I know, maybe trickier topics around diversity and inclusion, retaining or evolving a culture of the business, which all of those things have relevance to the way in which you approach innovation, or have relevance to the way that you approach innovation and directing the future. How have those discussions kind of played out and changed? Because you were talking about they've really risen up the priority list.
Absolutely. So I can tell you that, whether it's in, our leadership meetings or board discussions or talking to C-suite clients, the conversation has changed. I mentioned that 5 years ago, doing that tour, talking to customers, and it was a lot to do with data and technology and InsurTech and what's happening out in the landscape and how do the carriers keep up with it and leverage it. And CEOs now are talking very differently. It's like that has a path and they're on a journey, and that path has accelerated over the last few years. And now the conversation has really shifted to corporate social responsibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and of late, really around attracting and retaining talent. So as they're considering virtual versus on-premise and hybrid working models, how to maintain a corporate culture in that hybrid world. I've heard a stat that was a little bit more than 20% of most workforces in our industry have been onboarded during the pandemic. So if you think about having nearly a fourth of your workforce coming in to a virtual environment maybe never having met physically their coworkers, having this virtual relationship. What impact is that going to have on the culture of an organization that over the years has probably evolved because of people's experiences in the conference room or passing in the hallway and things of that nature?
Yeah.
And it really has shifted. And, you know, Matt, I think one of the things that would be interesting if you think about what impact that could have down the road, as those themes continue to be discussed across the C-suite and infiltrate the rest of those organizations, what impact might that have on product development? So as we look at products that are going to be more attractive to diverse audiences, or maybe looking at sustainability in products, so from a corporate social responsibility perspective, and looking at things that, you know, thinking about the future benefits of a product based on what we've just gone through as a world over the last few years, how to really bundle in more health focused solutions, physical and mental health. So I think there's probably, you know, if I was going to do a little bit of predicting, you said, you know, towards the end, we may want some predictions. I think those conversations around corporate social responsibility, DEI, around talent and culture are here to stay. Those are going to be on the roadmaps for a while, but I do believe they're going to really impact product development, start impacting the way we go about solutioning and the types of capabilities that are bundled into products. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting journey ahead.
Yeah, well, maybe let's touch on that a little bit, and just I'm interested in, you know, your feelings around what's in the insurtech world, or new propositions that you're seeing being spun up, launched, gaining momentum, maybe making their way through funding rounds. And do you get a sense that you know, the agenda of incumbents is following a trend that's already appearing in the market? I mean, we're certainly tracking more more niche or focused propositions out there, or do you think that actually, you know, as the demand or the agenda, you know, this becomes increasingly important for carriers, we'll see even more growth in those new propositions to meet the demands of the market?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think maybe I'll go to what can almost be described as like the emotion of what's going on in insurtech.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, it felt like a bit of a frenzy. There were so many things happening. The incumbents were having to react to what was happening around them. You know, do we need to stand up a corporate venture capital arm? Do we need to stand up a innovation group? Do we need to, like, how do we keep up with all of this? And I believe that things have kind of settled in, and insurtech has become part of their strategies. So back to kind of build, buy, partner type discussions. You know, is their strategy going to be to go acquire the tech or to partner for it? Or that seems to be more of the mode than thinking as an incumbent, we're going to build faster, better, cheaper than somebody else. So there's a lot of, but I feel like it kind of went from the Wild West and a bit of fear of missing out and a fear, like, how do we deal with this, to it's here to stay. It's actually good for our industry. It's not going to put us out of business. Let's go figure out how to leverage it. And that's been a nice kind of refreshing evolution in my view. And then it's also started, I think, to spring up some interesting other trends. So when you think about trends around privacy and data security and things of that nature, as we talk about the intersection of health and wealth, that's been a common discussion over the years. I think there's this third piece that's really critical, which is around data. And as the intersection of health and wealth comes closer together, the consumer has to have trust in an organization around data usage, because the benefits are clear of sharing that data, but it has to be protected. And so for the consumer to really have trust in these capabilities is key. So I'm not sure. I just went through a whole mind shift on that.
Yeah, we went on a journey. I loved it.
Yeah. But it just was really interesting to think about what's transitioned in InsurTech and some of the things that we're starting to see. It's really exciting, and I think that everybody has started to shift to kind of how they can embrace it and leverage it as opposed to fear it.
Yeah, and how do you guys approach that then as a business?
Yeah, well, I think you've probably met Andre Dreyer from our team that's focused on partnerships and investments, and there's been a learning curve for us, no question. I would say in our earliest years, we said, okay, well, let's go invest at very early stages. And it's purely about strategic, is there anything we can leverage? It's not about IRRs and target returns. And it's about advancing our learning agenda and looking at partners that we could bring to our customers. And, over the years, some of those bets paid off both strategically and financially, and others didn't. And that's to be expected.
Sure.
But we learned a few things. One is that companies that are interested in doing business with RGA, and I suspect this is true of many of our clients and others, as entrepreneurs, they're going to be diligent and knock on doors all around the organization. So they could enter through any function or any business anywhere around the world. And then eventually we would find out about it and go, oh, you're talking to them too? Yeah, they're a pretty interesting company. We better sync up and figure out, how we want to approach this relationship together. So today we have now a more refined process for how to engage organizations that approach us. Actually a CRM database just for InsurTech, so that we have transparency around the organization as we engage with companies and what we learn along the way. But we also then have probably a better strategy for, rather than reacting to what hits us, what are we looking for? Like more specifically, what are we trying to achieve, and what organizations and types of companies do we want to target to partner with based on our goals, rather than reacting to everything coming at us. And then it's also evolved into kind of what's the right balance of relationships with funds versus direct investing, because funds can be a real advantage. Their network is going to be broader. Sometimes their remit will be broader as well than just maybe InsurTech, but there could be interesting things that they explore that maybe weren't initially intended for insurance, but are applicable. And to be honest, they're probably better at picking the winners. So, that's what they do for a living. And so having fund relationships balanced with our direct investing has definitely been I'd say an important part of our strategy.
Great. So yeah, it sounds like a fair amount of evolution over through the course of the business. I guess that's only natural, but a more sophisticated approach and based on some hard-earned experience, I'm sure, along the way.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. So kind of comes to that point in time where you mentioned talking about maybe some predictions for the year ahead, and certainly, in the InsurTech space, kind of a bumper year when it came to investments alone, let alone into partnership activity and some, you know, pretty big ticket IPOs and M&A activity too. But yeah, in the live space, what are you seeing? Maybe so how some of these trends you think are going to manifest themselves in the remaining 11 months that we've got of 2022? What do you think?
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly the time flies. And we're already having conversations about, okay, this is what we're going to get accomplished in 2022, and here's what we're thinking about 2023. You know, wait a minute, the calendar just turned. What's happening? But I think we're going to still see, you know, with COVID variants and various hotspots and different ways to approaching the pandemic, that, you know, that's going to still be a way of life for us for a little bit, trying to figure out, you know, virtual and hybrid working, and people wrestling with the fact that some employers really want people to come back to the office and get back to some of the interactions and the culture that, you know, that they once knew. And a lot of people saying, I really don't want that experience. I have enjoyed the hybrid life. I've enjoyed, you know, you've got people across the spectrum. So I think one prediction is we're going to continue to struggle throughout the year with attracting, retaining talent, onboarding new people in a virtual world, embracing whatever this new culture is that we have, compared to what maybe the culture was a few years ago. I think that's going to continue to be a thing for our industry. I truly do believe those conversations around talent and culture, and as we talked earlier about corporate social responsibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, those are really going to start to have a greater impact on product development. So I expect to see more and more focus on how to build products that are increasingly relevant to new audiences, maybe people who in the past would not have been on the radar for insurance. And that's part of a corporate mandate or purpose. It's like, we're here to do good for the world, and so we need to be reaching more people, and that's where diversity ties in. Sustainability is another thing that I think within corporate social responsibility, there's a more clear line with property and casualty and the environment, but I believe in the life and health space, we have an opportunity as well. Even thinking about annuities, that could be products that are tied to sustainability objectives. And then I think the consumer interest will continue to be there about understanding what kind of coverages a family needs, and not just what I need to leave a legacy to my kids, but maybe even to further generations. It's like, bring me something that's going to help with what I need and what my kids and their kids are going to need, and maybe a multi-generational approach to thinking about that. And then I'd wrap with, I really think that data privacy and security topic is going to continue to be a focus, not just from a regulatory perspective, like all those things are very important to understand and adhere to, but from a trust perspective and gaining consumer confidence, maybe privacy, data security can suddenly be used as an advantage or looked at as a strategy as opposed to purely defensive.
Yeah, well, presumably, you know, the value of tools like AI effectively latent if you can't access the data required to make more sophisticated predictions, be more creative with the way that you deliver products and services are more personally relevant. So I can totally see that as a there has to be a strategic objective to, you know, convince or demonstrate to your customers that data is secure and that there's tangible value to them from you having access to it and then delivering products and services.
Absolutely. The value exchange has to be there. And we've learned that consumers are willing to share their data if they trust the organization and there's value.
Yeah. So one last question, just in your predictions around DEI and sustainability, and you described how more emerging in the life and health space, or maybe not as completely formed in its thinking. And I was just interested in your perspective, whether there are good examples that you can point out in the market, or whether it's a sense of people are trying wrestling with what it means and how to translate that into I don't know, the products that they build, or increasingly, as you say, partners that are looking for M&A prospects that they're considering. How does it come together?
Well, maybe I'll start on the DEI piece of that question. You know, most companies that you'll deal with will talk about their mission, vision, their values, their core purpose. You know, at RGA, our focus is trying to bring financial protection to all. And we can't do that as a reinsurer unless we have great partnerships with clients. And so our client organizations, in their diversification journey, they're looking to attract new audiences, and so together we can build products that help meet the needs of the consumer, but different consumers, focusing on maybe more ethnically relevant products, or from a gender diversity perspective. We've done a lot of research on females in their late 20s through age 40 to understand their views on insurance and what their needs might be, and their lifestyles, and how to make products more relevant to them. So I think we'll continue to explore and find like-minded partners that say, yeah, to serve the greater good, we need to reach new audiences with products that have more robust offerings that meet the true needs of the consumer. Certainly they have to be profitable and meet the needs of the business, but if we put the consumer first as we think about the creation, then that'll be the kind of the guiding light. I don't know if that helps with the full question that you asked, but that's just kind of where my mind moves to, kind of consumer need driving, and linking that with our purpose. Yeah,
sure. In fairness, I asked you about 3 questions in one, so I think you did pretty well deciphering that and then formulating a response. And I guess, you know, from a sustainability perspective, is it a similar story? It's about exploring and but finding a way to make it relevant to your customers, or
absolutely.
It's got to be intrinsic to your values and mission as well, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I, you know, as a life and health reinsurer, when it comes to corporate social responsibility and looking at environmental versus some of the other factors, you know, the social part of corporate social responsibility, I think in life and health, we can create more of a direct link to the social aspect. And so around health and wellness, actually mental health, we talked about earlier. And I think there's a interesting possible play here where if consumers are more and more interested in products and services that are doing good for the world, and we can show a direct connection that says, when you choose this particular product or service, a percentage of those proceeds are going back to do something good for the world, or maybe the investments that back these products are going to be aligned with your values. Like, I believe there's something there, but we're really just scratching the surface on that notion. And maybe this would be a good time for a plug that if anybody has ideas around that, I'd love to hear from you, because it's not well formulated, but I think it's important, and I think it will be a trend, and I'd rather be on the front end of it.
Sure. We'll insert your email address and personal telephone number at the bottom of the script. No, we won't.
Fair enough.
Listen, Dennis, thank you again. Excuse me while I choke, which is always a brilliant way to, it's pure emotion, Dennis.
Thank
you for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity.